Now that the season is over for Indiana basketball, news is coming soon on the brand new head coach.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Well, thank you so much for being here, truly making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. At the end of the show, we're going to look at the women's bracket as the Indiana Lady Hoosiers make it to the NCAA tournament. Talk about how the Big Ten's very well represented there, and Indiana has a tough path if they want to make a run in March. Plus, on the men's side of things, Indiana and West Virginia. I know we've talked about West Virginia with the whole coaching thing, and we'll get to some more of that here today, but those two programs should riot as they miss the NCAA tournament. More reactions to the bracket being released and the Hoosiers being left out. But now that the season is over, now that Indiana is done, Mike Woodson's era is finished, news could be on the way very, very soon. And I think it will be. Okay, I really, really do. I think that news is going to break very, very soon. I've been saying on this channel and on this show that I think before or no later than when a national champion is crowned in San Antonio for this college basketball season, the Indiana Hoosiers will have made the announcement on who their next head coach is going to be. And I'm still holding to that. I still think in the next 2 weeks, this is going to be finalized, announced, and done. And there are several reasons for that, but the main one being the fact that Indiana's season is now over, right? He didn't make it to the NCAA tournament. We declined all the other tournament invites, including the NIT. Didn't want to do it, didn't care, and I think that was the right decision because you're ending an era with Mike Woodson. It is now done. The players can do whatever the heck they want. I'm sure we're going to start seeing as the days go on, guys transferring, guys leaving, things like that. It could look a little ugly for a while, and I'm going to tell you just to hang on and not worry about it too much because let's be real. When a new coach comes in, we want things to change anyway. We want the roster to change. We want the mindset to change. We want all of that to change. And I think it will, no matter who the new coach is. But the question is, who is going to be the new coach? Who's that guy going to be? We told you on Friday that Ben McCollum from Drake has emerged as one of the top candidates. That is still true. Okay, that is still a very true statement. Now, he's being linked to the Iowa job. That is also true. I think Indiana and Iowa are both going after Ben McCollum at Drake, and we understand his allegiance to the state of Iowa. He's from that area. We understand. I'm hearing that Iowa's problem, or I guess McCollum's problem with Iowa, was their NIL situation, and it sounds like that the Hawkeyes are trying to get that fixed. Sounds like Ben McCollum is in the running for that job, and so is DeVries at West Virginia, right? You remember that whole link, and we had a conversation with our boy Mountaineer Paul last week about Indiana possibly going after DeVries. Do I think he's still on that list? Maybe, maybe not, but he could still be in consideration, so don't just completely wipe that name off the face of the earth. But I do think McCollum is in the running for the Indiana job. But it is all but confirmed that the other name for the Hoosiers, we're down to two. And the other name is Brad Brownell at Clemson. That is the other name that the Hoosiers are going after to be the next head coach. Very well could be the name that the Hoosiers are going after. And I've said several times on this show, I like him as a coach. I think he's a really good coach. I think he's been doing it. Well, I know he's been doing it for a really long time, and he is really starting to gain some steam and win some basketball games. Now, I understand there's a lot of hesitation here because he's been at Clemson for 15 years, and he's only won a handful of NCAA tournament games, and they've kind of been spread out. Okay, sure. He's also made a run to the Elite Eight, and all of his success in, I guess, succession, right? Or in a row, in a chain, in a trend, has been recently. during his time at Clemson. This wasn't back in 2008, okay? He's been doing it in recent years with the transfer portal and with NIL. And Indiana's thought process here has to be, if you can do that at Clemson, imagine what you could do at Indiana. That's the thought process here. And I think it's a good one. I think it's legit. I think it's a really good coach. Clemson's a really good team, man. Look at them. They're a 5 seed this year. 5. You can make the argument they should have been lower, but that's where they are. And they were right there in the ACC for the regular season and the tournament titles. He's a good coach, man. And I think he could do some really good things at Indiana. I like his play style. I like his talent acquisition. I like his talent retention, too. He seems like a guy that keeps his guys around. And I think that's really, really important in today's college basketball. And you may say, there's no way Indiana's going after him. That's not even true. Why are you even bringing his name up? Well, it's so true, and it's so much of a thing that Clemson, as we speak, is working on a contract extension for Brownell. They don't want to lose him. They understand what they have right now. They understand what they have as a head coach and why Indiana's coming after him, because he's a good coach. He's the right choice if Indiana wants to win some games. Is he my number one just slam dunk home run hire? No, I'm not going to say that because I don't believe that. But I do think it's a good option given where we are down the line of this coaching search, right? And so Indiana has made it clear they want him, and Clemson's doing everything they can to keep him. Now, they could type it up, print it on pretty paper, and give him the fanciest of pens and put it down in front of him. Doesn't mean he has to sign it, but they're going to do everything they can to keep him around. But as we've talked to several guests and other co-hosts here, or other hosts, I should say, on the Locked On Podcast Network, and as I've told you, when Indiana comes calling, people listen because it's IU. It's the brand. It's the colors. It's the assembly hall. It's Bloomington. It's the campus. It's everything that comes with it. When IU calls, you pick up the phone. And most people don't say no. So I think that's where we are. And I think this news could accelerate depending on how Clemson or Drake or others perform in the NCAA tournament, because I still think that's a big factor here too. Teams' performances in the tournament is a huge key here. Would Indiana hold off if Clemson makes a run to the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8? Yeah, probably. Would they hold off if Drake makes it a little bit of a run? Yeah, probably. But you got to keep that part in mind too. If they lose first round, this thing could be done by Sunday. You know what I mean? Like, this could be done in several days after these teams lose. I just don't think they are. I like Drake. I think they're going to pull an upset somewhere, right? They've got Missouri, very well could win that game as the 12 seed, or the 11 seed rather, over the 6 seed Missouri. Clemson, right? Clemson, trying to remember exactly where they were. I think they're on the other side. Yeah, there they are. They've got McNeese. Hey-o, they've got Will Wade and McNeese. That's been a name people have asked about too. So they could be on upset alert. All of a sudden, Clemson loses in the first round. You could have a new coach by this weekend if you're IU. I'm saying it's coming soon, and I think it is down to Brownell and McCollum. Could somebody else be in the works if those don't work out? Absolutely. But I think those are the two names you need to know right now for Indiana, with news that could be coming soon. All right, coming up here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast, we're going to talk more about that bracket that I was just looking at, because Indiana and West Virginia and some other teams should just absolutely riot. And North Carolina getting in, I'm not letting it go. We'll talk about that coming up next right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Factor. Eating healthy doesn't have to be complicated. With Factor, you get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, so you can fuel your body without the hassle of cooking. Factor meals arrive fresh, never frozen, and with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, you can customize your menu to fit your goals, whether that's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. The convenience is the best part. You literally get on each week, you set your meals, and they deliver right to your door. All you got to do, Open the box, take them out, and put it in the refrigerator. And then you heat it up when you want to. Microwave, oven, doesn't matter. I do it all the time at work, at home. It's truly the way to go. I love Factor. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Factor Podcast and use that code Factor Podcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code Factor Podcast, okay, at factormeals.com/Factor Podcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box with Factor. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's at supplyhouse.com. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. Reminder, this is a free daily show for you Monday through Friday, plus some bonus episodes throughout the week and on the weekends as well. Had a bonus episode yesterday, immediate reaction to Indiana missing the NCAA tournament. So if you missed that, we're going to talk more about it in this segment, but you can go and check that out. Immediate reactions. We were a little hot, I will say, and haven't really calmed down from that. You're going to hear that in just a second. But if you are listening or watching, whether listening on Spotify or Amazon or Apple or however you find us, thank you so much for being there. I ask that you just have those notifications turned on and leave us those 5-star reviews. I don't want you to miss any episodes, so that's the best way to do that. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up, right? Liking the video gets it out there, helps more people find it, helps more Indiana people find it, just like yourselves. And leave your thoughts in the YouTube comments down below. Brad Brownell, yes, no, maybe so. How do you feel about Brownell if he is the answer for the Indiana coaching search? And then subscribe to the channel. All you got to do is tap it once. You become an everydayer. You get notified when we post new episodes. It's simple. That's all you got to do. So thank you so much for doing all that and being a supporter of Locked On Hoosiers. So we've got our bracket, right? We've got the NCAA tournament bracket for 2025. We were sitting on pins and needles, Indiana fans were, on Selection Sunday. Half the bracketology says we were in. Half the bracketology said we were out. And in my opinion, the numbers said we should have been in. You can make the argument on whether you believe Indiana's a tournament team or not, tournament quality or not. And guess what? I'm not going to argue either way because I see both sides. Do I think Indiana had the wins to get in down the stretch? Yeah, I do. Going on the road to East Lansing, beating Purdue inside of Assembly Hall. I think those were two great wins, two of the better wins of the season. That's a 2 seed and a 4 seed that Indiana beat in the last several weeks of the regular season. I think that is something that should be rewarded. But you can also point to a lot of bad losses, including a loss in the first game of the Big Ten tournament that I told you was a win or go home type of game. You needed that win over Oregon, who is now, believe they're a 5 seed. Am I right? 5 or 6 seeds somewhere in there are the Oregon Ducks. So you needed that win to boost your resume. But a major problem that Indiana ran into was the horrifically bad, super weak non-conference schedule that the Hoosiers played in November and December. We talked about it going into the season. If you're an everydayer, you know where I'm coming from here. I was embarrassed almost to see Indiana's non-conference schedule because the only thing we had The only non-conference games we had that were any relevant or had any relevancy was the battle for Atlantis, where you saw teams like Louisville, Gonzaga, and Providence. Well, you got smacked by Louisville. Looks a little bit better now, I guess. They're an 8 seed somehow, Louisville is. Don't really know how that's possible. 13th ranked team in the country is an 8 seed. Okay. And then Gonzaga, who they're a 9. Is that right? Is that what they ended up getting? I think 8 or 9 seed Gonzaga was somewhere over there. Yeah, they're an 8 seed playing Georgia, the 9 seed. So you get smacked by both Louisville and Gonzaga, and you beat Providence, who ended up not being any good. But that was it. That's all the non-conference games you played. If you're Indiana, you had nothing going for you in the non-conference schedule. And I bring that up because apparently that's what got North Carolina into the tournament over teams like Indiana, West Virginia, and Ohio State. Do I think Ohio State was a tournament team? No, I don't. And they definitely could not have afforded to lose their first game in the Big Ten tournament a day before Indiana played, and they weren't able to do it. They lost to Iowa, man. They can't really do that. Then Iowa fired their coach. Like, come on, man, that's not really good. So Ohio State didn't deserve it. Losing to Indiana in the regular season finale and then losing in your first game of the Big Ten tournament, the Buckeyes were done. But teams like Indiana and West Virginia, and heck, even Boise State, should absolutely riot here. Indiana had 4 quad 1 wins, no bad losses, not a single loss in quad 2, 3, or 4. West Virginia had 6 quad 1 wins. 6 good wins. Win in Allen Fieldhouse against Kansas. They had solid wins. Did Indiana and West Virginia. North Carolina, 1. They were 1-12 in quad 1 games. But the committee cited their just incredible non-conference schedule. It was just so amazing. It was so good. And don't worry, the athletic director walked out of the room when they made the vote on North Carolina. Give me a freaking break. Are you serious? You're telling me that you believe that when they decided, when North Carolina popped up on the screen, he said, "Oh, sorry guys, hold on. Let me run out real quick. I don't want to have any influence here on whether North Carolina, go Heels, gets into the tournament. Let me step out really quick. I'll be right back." Really? A, do you really believe he actually left the room? And B, even if he did, he had all the time leading up to influence it before, and then you had to face him afterwards. He was coming back in the room. He came right back in if he did leave. There's influence there. Legitimate influence. And he's not just a member, folks. He was the committee chairman. He was the head man. He sat on TV last night and told us about the NCAA tournament and tried to hold back the biggest grin he could because his North Carolina Tar Heels, who did not deserve to be in the NCAA tournament, stole a bid from the Indiana Hoosiers or the West Virginia Mountaineers, whichever one. You can make the argument either way. At this point, it doesn't matter. It's more of a narrative that North Carolina got in as a bad team versus Indiana or West Virginia missing the tournament. There's great stuff out there. Joe Lunardi wrote an article this morning. I encourage you to go check that out. John Rothstein has some videos going around right now. You cannot tell me that they legitimately thought North Carolina was a good basketball team. They're not. Just watch them. They're terrible. They're actually bad. And their resume is even worse. It is criminal that in college basketball and college football, we had this conversation back in December, that we have committees that choose teams to play in the postseason based on their opinions, and we're basing it on the opinions of sitting active athletic directors with direct ties to college sports teams. How does that make sense? Please give me a reasonable explanation on why that makes sense. Oh, it's because they're knowledgeable and they know the situation. Yeah, almost too well, right? Almost too good. They should not be involved. Michigan's athletic director should not be involved in the college football playoff committee. North Carolina's athletic director should not be on the NCAA tournament committee. Give us guys like Joe Lunardi and John Rothstein and put them in a room and let them decide, because they actually know what they're talking about, and they base it off of metrics, off of numbers, off of wins and losses. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? If you're not going to use those things, then why play the games? Let's just sit down at the beginning of the season and say, well, we like North Carolina because they have pretty colors. Let's put them in because it's just right for the Tar Heels to be in the tournament. But we just don't think Boise State's going to be good this year, so we're just not going to put them in the tournament. Like, if that's what we're coming down to, let's just do it that way, in my opinion, because there's no real metrics, there's no formula, there's no strategy, there's no pattern, there's nothing. There's nothing to go off of. It truly is, how did you feel when you woke up on Sunday? And let's be real here too. They didn't make this decision on Sunday. They admitted that they voted on North Carolina on Saturday night. They voted on everything on Saturday. They don't care. They don't care. So it truly is a crime that Indiana and West Virginia and possibly Boise State didn't get a shot to make it to the tournament. All three of them weren't going to, but one of them deserved it over North Carolina. And for us, unfortunately, Indiana gets left out. I think a lot of people may just be happy that this season is over, the Mike Woodson era is over, and now we fully focus on a new coaching search for the Hoosiers. So there you go. There's that. But good news is, while Indiana men's basketball didn't make it, the women's team did. We'll take a look at that, their overall record, their path to what they have to do to make a run in the tournament. That's coming up on our final segment right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 in extra bonus bets on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on some underdogs right now. I told you about a couple of them. McNeek's possibly in there, so you can get in on teams like that, or even Drake at FanDuel, because they make it easy with the spreads, totals, and the game props. Plus, the FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly, so there's no waiting around, and you can do the same. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. But before we talk about Indiana women's basketball making it to the NCAA tournament, I want to tell you about our bracket breakdown here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
So be sure you check that out, okay? The bracket breakdown. That was Andy Patton, Isaac Shade, our co-host of the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Check that out through Amazon Fire TV. Really, really cool. You saw how awesome did that studio look, man. They're breaking down everything for the bracket, reacting to games. They've got big-time former players and contributors joining them with the bracket breakdown. So be sure you check that out. You can find the description or the details down in the description of this episode below. But while the Indiana men did not make it to the NCAA tournament, the Indiana women did. I want to shout them out and show a little love, as Indiana is a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. They will be taking on the Utes from Utah. Indiana this season, 19-12 overall, finished 8th in the Big Ten, and a new-looking Big Ten, right? And this was also a new-looking Indiana team, right? You lose a couple of big-name players, but you brought back a couple of big-name players, too. In between Garzon and Parrish, you felt like this team was still going to be good enough to get to the NCAA tournament, and that's exactly what they did. And they're also a part of a Big Ten conference that is very well represented. I believe I counted 14, maybe 12 that came from the Big Ten into the NCAA tournament, but you had 2 of those being number 1 seeds, UCLA and USC. Now, I know they're former Pac-12 teams, RIP, but we claim them now because they're Big Ten squads. And so you've got UCLA that made the NCAA tournament, Michigan State in there as a 7 seed, mentioned USC. How about California in there, right? That's 4 for the Big Ten. You've got Iowa as a 6 seed. We know how dangerous they can be in big tournaments like this. Nebraska as a 10 seed, Michigan as a 6 seed, Ohio State as a 4 seed, Illinois as an 8 seed right now. You've got Oregon as a 10, another one of those newbies here in the Big Ten. Maryland is in there. You have Indiana as well. So, I mean, the Big Ten on the women's side of things did very, very well. In the men's bracket, I believe there were 8 that made it from the Big Ten, a few less than we were expecting. There was a lot of talk about the men getting 10 teams from the Big Ten in, but it is what it is. But the women's bracket, man, it is really going to be a lot of fun. Indiana, again, playing Utah. That's going to be on the 21st. So that is Friday for the women's NCAA tournament. They'll play Utah on ESPN2. Looks like 12:30 Central, 1:30 Eastern time. Problem is, if you win that game, you got to then most likely play the 1 seed South Carolina in the round of 32. Do I think South Carolina's good this year? Absolutely, I do. Do I think they're as good as they have been in the past? No, I don't. So I think Indiana can make some noise. Other teams in your bracket, Alabama's the 5 seed, Maryland's the 4. Mentioned West Virginia as a 6, North Carolina's the 3, Duke is the 2. So it's not going to be easy at all. But I think Indiana can make a little noise. And if you take down a 1 seed in the round of 32, man, that just builds your confidence. That just gives you so much momentum moving forward. But you got to take on a talented Utah team. Again, that's going to be on Friday. Just wanted to shout them out a little bit as the Indiana women are able to get to the NCAA tournament. You got a couple of big seniors in there. Would love to see them make a run here this year for Indiana women's basketball. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you so much for being here and truly making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. My audio listeners, again, be sure you have those notifications turned on, okay? That way you know every time we post a new episode. And then leave us a 5-star review. If you're enjoying it, we would appreciate you doing that. My YouTube watchers, like the video, comment your thoughts down below, and subscribe to the channel. We are back tomorrow, Hoosier fans. So until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.